This is how you buy, fix, and flip a car from Copart for profit. My name's RIDZ. I buy and sell cars, and for the past 3 years, I've been buying and selling cars for profit every single time. So, what is Copart? It's basically a salvage auction where vehicles deemed too expensive to repair go through after a collision or accident. And usually, these are from direct insurance companies. But you do also get private sellers, which can be very, very daunting. And don't worry, I'm going to tell you how to spot the difference. Now, the chances are you've watched Matt Armstrong or Ethan Overton, the two biggest creators, arguably, in the YouTube scene for repairing cars. All the cars you've seen in their videos came from Copart. The only difference being between us and them is instead of just fixing them for content, me and you, we're going to flip them for profit. Although this is just a brief overview, there's way more micro steps involved, and anything could go wrong at any time, and it can become more expensive as well. So bear that in mind. So here's a few steps that are required for you to actually start buying and selling your car on Copart for profit. First, you have to buy a car and you have to evaluate whether or not it's worth bidding on. Then you have to pay the fees, which is usually between £200 and £500, and delivery as well, which is usually a minimum of £100 to £200 all around. And then you have to source the parts for repairs and have the car professionally repaired, because let's be real, we're buying a damaged car, am I right? Then you have to keep the car on the road somewhere, so we're going to go through that as well. And legally, last thing you want is the car getting seized or getting in legal trouble. And finally, listing the car for sale, the most important thing. That's where we get the money for the car. So when it comes to choosing the car, you're a complete beginner. Let's be honest with it, right? You've never bought a car before. Your budget is realistically under £1,000, so you're going to stick with a cheaper car like a hatchback. And most beginners, they usually opt for like a Vauxhall Corsa D or like a Ford Fiesta Mark 7. So you're going to want to aim for a car which is category N, a non-structural car. So if you weren't familiar, there's two types of cars you can buy from Copart as a public member anyway. A category S, a structurally damaged car, and a category N, non-structural damaged car. In the name, right, you'd obviously rather go for a car which is non-structurally damaged, so like a bumper missing or wing missing or headlight missing, all the three combined, but not serious enough to be category S, structurally damaged, like the chassis and the beams. When I go for vehicles which have only come from the insurance directly, and you're probably wondering how can you detect that? On the last image of that Copart car you're probably looking at, there should be a letter on the last digit of a sticker on the windscreen. If you see an X, chances are that car has highly likely come from an insurance company. So go for those cars there. You're also going to want a car which has a long MOT. Reason being, let's say, for example, you buy a car with a short MOT. That's an extra step you're going to have to do. And if the car's been in a crash where suspension components, the brakes need doing, you're going to have to not only spend extra getting those repaired, but you're also going to have to take the car to those places like a mechanic too. And even if you repair these on your own, it's just more time, which isn't worth it at all. If the car's a long MOT, you can get away with not having to do that, provided it runs and drives great. And you cannot prevent these issues no matter what you do. Fees will always be pretty high. There's nothing you can do about that. It's just how auction websites work. There's no guarantee the car will run smooth with no engine or gearbox issues. So I'm going to put this into perspective for you, right? You're buying this car, the listing you see is exactly how it's described, or at least that's what you think. So although the listing may say run and drive, the big problem with these auction sites is most of the time the staff are just on a time basis. They don't spend long checking the car. Runs and drives, they can hear the engine starting, they move it forward and back, job done. But when you actually come to get the car, what happens if the engine misfiring on delivery or there's smoke coming out the exhaust? These things sometimes don't get declared, which is obviously a big headache and not something you want to discover once you've paid for the car in full. Then you find that issue after. Now, these cars will always take longer to sell as well because they're write-offs. I'm going to give you a perfect example. If you're buying your own personal first car, right? Not to flip, just your own first car. Would you go for the one that's been in an accident beforehand and it's £1,200? Or for just £200 more, you can buy a car which has never been in an accident, has full paperwork and logbook with it. I'm going to tell you a bit more about it after, for just £1,500. Obviously, you're going to go for the latter. Unfortunately, there's no going around fees when you're buying salvage cars, and you're going to find that the fees themselves are basically twice what you won the car for. So let's say you win a car for £200, the fees in total will probably be anywhere from between £200-400, somewhere around there. And in addition to that, obviously we have to have the car delivered. The car's just not going to go from the auction directly to you out of nowhere, right? That's where recovery comes in. Now, you might argue, couldn't you just drive the car back? The damage doesn't look too bad, but do you really want to risk But do you really want to risk driving the car back to your house when there's a risk of you having to sort the insurance out properly and getting pulled over by the police as well on suspicion of driving a car that might have just been an accident and you'd a hit and run? Let's be honest, that looks dodgy. You're driving a car with half the front end not properly put on. I would pull you over if I was a policeman as well. Now, delivery usually costs you £2.50 per mile from most places, but Copart also has a built-in delivery feature, right? So let's say the location for Copart Sandy, which is one of the locations from me, is 100 miles. Nice and easy. Let's get out our calculator and let's see how much it'll cost. It's going to be £2.50. Whoops. It's going to be £2.50 times by 100. Simple, £250. Obviously, that's a fair cost. Let's say we won the car and after paying fees, it owes us £600-700. I'd recover on top at around £1,000. Not fun. Now that we have a car, you need to figure out where you're going to store it. And just remember that you risk the car being seized for keeping the car on the street untaxed. So first things first, we're going to have to find parts on eBay and Facebook Marketplace. These are the two best marketplaces because this is where most people list the parts for sale. Now you can search the exact generation of the car. This is the only method I recommend you doing to find a car, to find parts for your car. So that Ford Fiesta from earlier is the Mark 7 generation. So we're going to search Ford Fiesta Mark 7 bonnet if we're looking for a bonnet. Now, you might be wondering, how do you find the generation and why do you need to do that rather than just the year of the car? Here's a perfect example. So these are two cars, Vauxhall Astra models. This Vauxhall Astra H or Mark 5 was made from 2006 or 4, I believe, all the way down to 2011 or 2013. I may be wrong on that. But this car here, the Astra J, the one that came after this one here, was made from 2010 and onwards. So let's say I went on eBay and I searched Vauxhall Astra 2010 or 2011 bonnet. If you've never, yes, you could just look at the shape of it and see it's, visibly different. But if you're a beginner and you just click order on that part, what happens if they are different? Obviously, it's going to set you back. Another point I want to add is you want to find parts which is the same color as your own car, and that's going to save you money on obviously the bodywork. If you have to have a bonnet replaced or repaired, if you have to have a bonnet resprayed, that's obviously primer and paint that has to be done from body shop, which is an extra cost. And because you're already racking up the costs as a new beginner on your first car flip, it's not worth doing. Try to find parts in the same color. Finally, you need to find a body shop to repair the car, and realistically, we're also going to have the car delivered/recovered to that body shop, which is an extra cost. At that point, the car is just left in their hands to be repaired. With the car now repaired and ready to sell, we face a big issue: storage. Now, most cars from Copart, they don't come with a logbook, meaning they cannot be taxed. So you're going to have to apply for a V5C logbook with a V62 form. That usually takes about 6 weeks to arrive. And that adds an extra owner on top, and it puts the car into your name, which DVLA keeps a record of, and that allows them to track how many cars you had throughout the year. For tax purposes, if you're someone that wants to keep your side hustle income on the low, that isn't the best option because let's be honest, they can track how much you're earning. Without taxing the car again, you risk it being clamped or seized. Not good again. Now, at this point, it's best if you just store the car on a driveway or private land. But if you do not have the option, things can get tricky. Now we move on to listing the car for sale. With the car now ready, the best platform you can list it on is Facebook Marketplace. It's free to list cars on there. And you'll probably spent a lot of money getting this car up to this point here where it's been repaired, it's ready to sell. So you don't really want to spend extra money. So you could list on Auto Trader, you could list it on Gumtree, which may cost a bit of money for extra listings. But you want to save money, right? That's why Facebook is always a good option for you guys here. You're going to want to take the car to a scene which is like an industrial estate in the background or has greenery in the background like below. You can see this Vauxhall Astra here has been taken to an industrial site. They took the pictures, it looks nice, professional. At the same time, on the next to it, you have a Ford Fiesta. They've taken this image with a bit of greenery. People may argue that one attracts the other and one attracts a different sort of audience. So industrial estates usually attract everyone, but with elderly people, you might find that they're attracted to more of like a greenery in the background sort of scene. Doesn't make much of a difference. You could choose either. There's no pressure. My personal favorite, I like to list my cars in an industrial estate just because it looks more professional and uniform. So you want to take as many photos of the exterior and interior as possible, highlighting all the features, so things like cruise control, electric windows, sat nav, etc., etc. When you're writing the description, add details of all of those features. And you must declare that the car is a previous write-off as well. So let's say you bought a category N vehicle, right? You have to declare that. Yes, that is going to put people off buying your car. You will get less interest overall. However, it has to be done because if you sell a car to someone who isn't aware that you sold them a category N car, they can come back to you. They can get a chargeback from the bank, or they can trace that back to you, and they can even report you to DVLA and HMRC, which obviously isn't good for anyone. If you're a new car flipper, that's the last thing you want. To save you some headache, you definitely will come across scammers and time wasters when you're listing on Facebook Marketplace. So here's some tips to avoid these sort of people, or at least detecting them. So any profile made in 2024 or 2025 is usually a scam, right? Most of these guys with these profiles, look, they're just there to basically get a deposit off you. I'm even going to add locked profiles on there as well. So sometimes you may get someone who's a locked profile is basically a private profile. Anyone who does that, they usually are a scammer. But you do also get genuine people as well. But if you check things like their profile picture and whatnot, they have an American sounding name. They are probably just a scammer that wants you to. This is a very common scam. They send you a link to a HPI check report. They want you to pay for that on an external website in the hope, with the promise that they're going to buy your car. But they just want your money and your card details. Obviously not a good idea. Kind of links to the previous point where someone texts in American style, like if they ask you if the car has a clean title instead of a HPI check, or if it's HPI clear, that's another sign that they're a scammer. No one in the UK is going to ask you if the car has a clean title. They're going to ask you if it's HPI clear. At this point, you've sourced the car from Copart and you've now got it ready for sale. I'm going to tell you what I personally do not buy cars from Copart, and this might interest you as well if you're someone who's just about to buy your first car flip. So I've just shown you the complete process. You can see how long-winded it was. For a beginner, you have to do all those steps, and here's the thing, anything else would come up as well, as we already mentioned. You could buy a car with just hidden damages, which you didn't expect, or even a car which takes ages to sell. Or even in the case of like someone not wanting to buy that car all because it hasn't got a logbook. I've personally had cars from Copart which I bought to flip for profit, and they end up becoming extremely overpriced right from the get-go for just bidding on the car because other people new to this car game overbid on them, and they're not even sure how much they should really be paying for it than to how much to sell it for on profit. They end up losing out and they make a huge loss. Now, a car which initially seems like a steal ends up becoming a money pit, especially as you add things like repairs, recovery, and the time spent as well working on the car. So let's say you spent all that time, we've already gone through this, right? If you spent around £1,000 just getting the car alone, having it repaired and whatnot, and you list the car for £1,500, but because it's got that category title, not only is it taking longer to sell, people negotiate you further on it as well. You're only making £100 profit if they negotiated you down to £1,200. You've done all that work just to make £100 profit, if that. They broke your back for basically nothing. What I personally do now is buy and sell clean cars to make maximum profit and minimum work. So rather than heading to an auction, running around like a dog for parts, having it repaired, and doing all these little micro tasks and side hustles, I'll just get a clean car in, take to the car wash, ready to go, and make much nicer profits. So I'll buy cars under £1,000 and sell them to make around £1,000 profit. At this point, you're left with two options. Do you want to either A, blindly waste time and money because everyone else does? So you've seen a lot of guys like Matt Armstrong and Ethan Overton and a lot of other guys on TikTok you've probably seen buying who are more experienced than you, buying from Copart, Snetic, any other salvage auction. Or you want to make maximum profit for minimum work like we do. If you're leaning towards the latter side, I've got something for you. Looking to get started with your own car flipping journey, but you're not sure exactly how to get started, what cars to buy, how much to sell them for, even how to attract those high-paying customers. Simply book a call with the link in the description and can learn one-to-one with me. These are some of the results that we've achieved for other complete beginners. That being said, then check out my other videos on car flipping. Drop a subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.
Show me the money!